Welcome to Tabernacle Talk, a Bible study podcast. I'm your host, Brian Self, pastor of Tabernacle Baptist Church in Essex, Maryland. We hope this time in God's Word will help you know Christ, grow in His Word, and show His love to others. Let's dive right in. Hello, and welcome back to Tabernacle Talk. We are in Psalm 62 today. This is a song that I have really loved. I loved it even more once I heard the song that I've linked in the show notes today from Sovereign Grace Music called My Soul Will Wait. And it is an amazing song. If you memorize the song, you'll have memorized basically the intent of this psalm, and it will help just remind you of Scripture. And so I would encourage you to listen to it. The inscription for the psalm says this: For the choir director, according to Jeduthun, a psalm of David. I am at rest in God alone. My salvation comes from Him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I will never be shaken. How long will you threaten a man? Will all of you attack as if he were a leaning wall or a tottering fence? They only plan to bring him down from his high position. They take pleasure in lying. They bless with their mouths, but they curse inwardly. Selah. Rest in God alone, my soul, for my hope comes from Him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I will not be shaken. My salvation and glory depend on God, my strong rock. My refuge is in God. Trust in Him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts before Him. God is our refuge. Selah. Common people are only a vapor. Important people an illusion. Together on a scale, they weigh less than a vapor. Place no trust in oppression or false hope in robbery. If wealth increases, don't set your heart on it. God has spoken once. I have heard this twice. Strength belongs to God, and faithful love belongs to you, Yahweh, for you repay each according to his works. Here, a wonderful song that has some different refrains and kind of one main thought of resting and waiting, relying on God, finding our peace and our hope in Him. And then kind of two verses, if you will, talking about one is the wicked and the other is what the sum totality of our lives really ends up being. So let's look at this and hopefully we'll learn something for today. First, verses 1 and 2, I'm at rest in God alone. My salvation comes from Him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I will never be shaken. I'm thankful that our ultimate rest does come from God, that we can find our ultimate fulfillment, we can find ultimate peace, we can find joy, we can find security in God. Family members will let us down or they will pass away. Our job will not always be there for us. There will come a day when you can no longer work, and so your job is a very poor place to find security in. You can't even, fully rely on like your government or your, perhaps your bank accounts. Nothing in this life is guaranteed. And so what can we find security in? Do we just have kind of a nihilism of whatever happens, happens, I guess? Or do we say, God is the one that's in control? And so I know that whatever comes, good or bad, I'm going to find my security in Him because He doesn't change. My eternity, my security, my soul's everlasting status, it does not shift because He does not shift. He does not change. And so as a result, any trust that I put in Him is secure. I love the song, Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. When everything around me is shaken, I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. And so grateful for that truth. David says, my salvation comes from him. Even back in the Old Testament, these ones that knew God, they knew that their salvation, it only came through the Lord. It only came through what the Lord provided. It was not through their own good works that they had a relationship with God. Instead, as at the very beginning with Abraham, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him for righteousness. Verse number 2, David says, he alone is my rock. That is that, frankly, that firm foundation. The wise man built his house upon the rock. It is a foundation that's not going to shift like sand or like, dirt that could move, that wouldn't be steady. He is the rock. He's the place of safety and refuge and salvation. He says, my stronghold, that fortress, that tower that is not going to be torn down by any enemy. If God has built it, then God will sustain it. And so that's why David says, I will never be shaken. I'm never going to be thrown out from my place before God. I might have to be on the run due to family members trying to usurp the throne. I might have my sicknesses that end up taking my life, but I will not be shaken in the Lord. Verses number 3 and 4. How long will you threaten a man? Will all of you attack as if you were a leaning wall or a tottering fence? Here he's talking to people and he's saying, you're trying to go after individuals. You are wicked and you are trying to get money from people. You're trying to extort. You're trying to rob. And you're acting like, this is an easy target that I'm going to go after. And then he says they only plan to bring him down from his high position. They take pleasure in lying. They bless with their mouths, but they curse inwardly. That there is not a there's not a good heart here. And not only are they like wicked and doing bad things, but they're also like disguising it through kind words. That they bless with their mouths. They're like, oh yeah, I'm totally with you. God bless you. Hey, oh man, how many crops did you get this year? That's amazing. What did you have enough barns to put those in? Like, how do you get all of that in there? Hey, where's that out on your property again? And so then they go, okay, we know where everything is. We've blessed with our mouths, but inwardly we are cursing this person. We are wanting to take everything that God has given him. Think even of James chapter 3. Where God says, with our mouths, we bless God and we curse man. And he says, these things should not be so. Then in verse number 5, he says, rest in God alone, my soul, for my hope comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I will not be shaken. That refrain from the very beginning of David reminding his own soul, like who God is and how God has dealt with him. Then in verses 7 and 8, my salvation and glory depend on God, my strong rock. If I'm going to be saved, it's going to be dependent on God. If I'm going to have any glory, any good things in this life that is praiseworthy, if I'm going to have any positions, it's only going to come from my dependence on God. It's not going to come from how great I am. And then I love verse 8. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts before him. God is our refuge. To trust in God, to believe him, to take him at his word, that when he says it, we believe it. What he commands, we obey. What he promises, we take hold of. If God is truly who he says he is, then he is absolutely deserving of our trust and our belief. And then I love that line, pour out your hearts before him. Man, I've been there. Frankly, I was there at like 1 and 2 a.m. this morning, that I was saying, God, here's the situation, and it is just wrecking my mind, and I don't know how it's going to turn out. So God, I'm pouring out my heart to you and saying, hey, here's this worry that I have. Here's what I know is right and good and what needs to happen. And God, here is my prayer for this. And God, here's my worst nightmares about this. And I just poured out my heart before God to say, God, everything I'm thinking, everything I'm afraid of, everything that I'm glad in, I'm going to put all of it in front of you. It's the 1 Peter 5, cast all your cares on him because he cares for you. Pour out your heart to God. Then verses 9 and 10, common people are only a vapor. Important people an illusion. Together on a scale, they weigh less than a vapor. Here, David says whether a person's just a lowly commoner or whether a person is a king over a whole country, there is no true difference in them. That we are fading. We are not eternal. This is what James would tell us in James 4. He says, what is your life? It's even a vapor, a mist that appears for just a moment and then vanishes away. And so because of how short our lives are, David says in verse 10, place no trust in oppression or false hope in robbery. If wealth increases, don't set your heart on it. He says, don't do financial crimes. And, maybe you might not physically rob your neighbor. If you do that, stop it. That's not the Jesus way. But maybe you might be, doing tax evasion or tax fraud, things like that. Don't do that. That is bad and evil. Don't place your trust in robbery. He says if wealth increases, if God does give you more money, he says don't set your heart on it. Don't be like, man, I got to keep all of this that I've had. Have an open hand to say, God, whatever you want done with your money, if you take it away, if you give it, if you want me to give it to other people, if you want me to invest it, if you want me to save it for a rainy day, God, whatever you want me to do with my money, I will do. But I'm not going to put my heart on it. I'm not going to base my happiness or my security or my I'm not going to put my love on money. Verses 11 and 12, he says, God has spoken once. I've heard this twice. Strength belongs to God, and faithful love belongs to you, Yahweh. The one who is able to accomplish things is our God, and the one who sticks with us in good times and in bad, who has promised everlasting promises to us, that is the Lord. It is Yahweh. And he says, for you repay each according to his works. That God sees what you are going through, and as you follow him, he will not be unjust, but he will give you a full recompense for everything that you have done for him and for others. And if you are pursuing wickedness, if you are not pursuing a relationship with God, realize that God will repay you according to your works. So turn to Jesus, find salvation, and be one of God's children, following him, viewing him as your refuge, your hope, and your salvation, the one that you can pour out your heart to. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope that Psalm 62 would be an encouragement. Again, you can listen to the song by Sovereign Grace Music, My Soul Will Wait. It is an absolutely incredible song that I know will bless you in your Christian walk. Thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow for Psalm 63, which is another amazing song.